So I'm going to be walking you through how to write your introductory paragraph for your Groundbreaker essay. And so what I've done is I took my essay outline and I've got my introduction, and there are three parts to the introduction. There's the hook, the basic background information, and then the thesis statement. So when I was doing my outline, I came up with several different options for what to do with my hook. The idea of a question I came up with was, what do Snow White, Aladdin, and Lion King all have in common? I looked for quotations said by Walt Disney, and I found this one that says, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And since this is a Groundbreaker essay, I thought that was a really appropriate quote to pick. I looked up some trivia, and I found out that WALL-E was named after Walt Disney. And then the last one is the narrative option. And so I was thinking about the time that I went to Disney World and I started narrating what that experience is like. So that's something like, Disney World is a place filled with magic. Mickey Mouse, princess castles, and joyful children can be seen at every turn in the park in Orlando, Florida. So when I'm writing my hook, I want to pick one of these options rather than do all of them. So the one that I think is the best is this one here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste from my introduction, and I'm going to move that over to where my draft is starting right here. So when we're doing the parenthetical citations, we want to do either the author's last name or the article title in quotation marks. But let me show you the website where I got this from. It was just this one right here, which is Brainy Quote. So since, I guess I should actually change that because the name of the article is right here. So I want to change this, instead of being Brainy Quote, to Walt Disney Quotes, because that is the name of the article title. Okay, so I've got my hook. Next up, according to my outline, is the background information. So what I noticed about a lot of the background information on your outlines was that a lot of people did a great job saying where they were born and when they were born, but they didn't have a whole lot of information about childhood or first jobs and that sort of stuff. So I've got a really thorough explanation of what the beginning of Walt Disney's career was like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and use some of that information, but I need to put it in my own words and turn it into a paragraph rather than a series of bullet points. So you can just kind of watch and I'll narrate as I'm going through this. Okay, so it makes sense to start with where Walt Disney was born. So I'm just going to start off simple. Walt Disney was born on December 5th, 1901 in Chicago, Illinois. Okay, so I've got some of that information, but let's go back and see what else I can include. And he lived most of his childhood in Marceline, Missouri, where he began drawing, painting, and selling pictures. So I'm going to add on to the sentence that I have and say, but he spent most of his childhood in Missouri. Okay, so since I did not already know this information before I did my research, I really need to make sure that I'm still citing. So I need to go back, and all three of these bullet points are all from the same source. So I'm going to do Walt Disney Biography 1. So again, that's the name of the article title in quotation marks, and then I have the page that I got it from right there, because this was that printed page, and it was a 2-page article. So I want to specify that it was the first page. Okay. And I want to talk about his experience as a kid, because I've got these good details about drawing, painting, and selling pictures to neighbors and family friends, drawing and photography classes, contributing cartoonist for the paper. All of that is really good information that helps my readers know why Walt Disney became such a great cartoonist. So I'm going to kind of put that all together. During his childhood, he sold drawings, paintings, and cartoons to his neighbors. Okay, so I've got that's one sentence that can stand on its own, but I can keep.
Students who ride second load buses are now dismissed. If there's a custodian available, please go to 713 to unlock Mr. Burrell's door for a student.
All right, I can actually keep going. So I'm going to say, and eventually joined his school's newspaper and was a contributing cartoonist. Okay, I'm going to change that because it told me I spelled eventually wrong. And just like last time, I need to make sure that I'm citing. So even though this is from the same exact source, I still want to cite because it doesn't hurt to cite more than you have to, but it does hurt if you're not citing when you're supposed to. So I've got some of the good information about his childhood, and I want to kind of summarize that in my own words. So I'm going to say he seemed born for animation from a young age. I'm going to do from an early age instead. Okay. So I've gone through when he was born, where he was born, what he did in his childhood that helped contribute to his success later. And now I want to talk about the beginning of his career. So I'm going to go back to my outline, and I've got the information about Laugh-O-Gram being his first studio, and it failed because he had to declare bankruptcy. And then there's some information that I got from two different sources about his first full-length animated film, which was Snow White. So I want to talk a little bit about Laugh-O-Gram and then move into Snow White, and I think that'll be good for my background information. So he opened up his first studio, and I want to say the name of the studio, Laugh-O-Gram, and I need to look back and make sure. Okay, yeah, the O is not capitalized. So he opened up his first studio, Laugh-O-Gram, but it failed, and I need to say where I got this information from. Again, I'm still working in that same source, Walt Disney Biography, page 1. Okay. And now I want to talk a little bit about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So when I was doing my research, I didn't realize that people didn't think that Snow White would be successful. People actually called it Disney's folly, and folly is kind of like another word for a mistake. So I think that that's really important because even though people didn't think that he would be successful, it turned out that he was. So he persevered, which is one of those characteristics of being a groundbreaker. So I want to make sure I have that information in there. So I'll say people thought he was crazy for wanting to make a full-length animated film. Okay, so that is information that I got from this source. So I want to cite Lambie 1 right now. Lambie 1. But I think this one's a good one for me to use. Let's see. But this is a good direct quotation that I can use right here. Oops. Let's see if I got that. Okay, but it produced an imaginable $1.499 million in spite of the Great Depression. So I think that that's really good information because it's very specific. But since this is part of that same sentence, I want to uncapitalize that it right there. Okay, so I'm going to read back because that's kind of a complicated sentence because I have two different sources that I'm citing, and I'm going to make sure that it makes sense. People thought he was crazy for wanting to make a full-length animated film, but it produced an unimaginable. Okay, so what I'm missing here is the name of the full-length animated film. So I want to add that in. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Okay. Oops, that's not how you spell it. Dwarfs. Okay. And now I think that makes perfect sense. So I'm just going to kind of wrap up this background information before I move to my thesis. So I'm going to use my own words to do that. Disney Studios took off from there. Okay. So it's always good to go back and read through what you have, make adjustments. So I'm going to read through this paragraph and see where I can make some changes. Walt Disney once said, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." Walt Disney was born on December 5th, 1901 in Chicago, Illinois, but he spent most of his childhood in Missouri. Okay, I think all that information goes well together. During his childhood, he sold drawings, paintings, and cartoons to his neighbors and eventually joined his school's newspaper and was a contributing cartoonist. He seemed born for animation from an early age. He opened up his first studio, Laugh-O-Gram, but it failed. Okay, so here, this seems a little bit choppy, so I'm just going to say, but it failed because he had to declare bankruptcy, just to add a little bit more information and make that sentence a little more complex. People thought he was crazy for wanting to make a full-length animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but it produced an unimaginable $1.4 million in spite of the Depression. Disney Studios took off from there. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. And just the last step is my thesis statement. So I'm going to go back to my outline, and I have already written my thesis statement. I say Walt Disney is a groundbreaker because he started the children's animation film industry. So that's my first body paragraph. And he has paved the way for other studios to continue his progress in animated entertainment. So I like that thesis statement. It clearly restates and answers the question. So I am just copying and pasting from my outline, and I'm putting it in there. And I had one last thing that I wanted to change about this. Before I'm totally done, I feel like there needs to be a little bit of a bridge between my hook and my background information, like something that's going to connect these two together. So I want to add a sentence that's like, even though we know Walt Disney to be a successful film director, it didn't always seem like his dream would come true. So I think that I like this because it bridges those two, and then it also makes a reference to one of his movies. I can't remember which movie it is, but it's about dreams coming true, and there's a song about it. So I think that that's appropriate for an introduction. So just keep that in mind as you are working on writing your introductions today.